EverVeg, the perennial vegetable. Why we are producing these vegetable young plants and for what customers we are producing them. Welcome to Gardeners Radio by Lubera-Edibles, the podcast for professional gardeners. We are talking about edible plants. EverVeg or perennial vegetables are, for example, rhubarbs, horseradish, skirret, of course, sea kale and also tree kale and many, many more. My name is Frederick Vollert and I work at Lubera-Edibles, and there I'm responsible for product development.
And my name is Markus Kobold. I'm co-founder of Lubera-Edibles together with my friend Rupert Meyer, which is not here on the table. And I'm founder of Lubera 2 and breeder of Lubera. There I'm responsible for almost everything, especially for breeding. So I'm producing stuff where you are doing the choices for Lubera-Edibles, which plants you are producing in our young plant company at Lubera-Edibles and then selling to other professional gardeners all over Europe. And here we are talking about a new group of products which we are naming EverVeg, which is a short name for perennial vegetables. We say a perennial vegetable, an EverVeg, in our words, should be planted one time, and then you should be able to take leaves, stems, fruits of the roots, whatever, of them for at least 5 years. So that's our definition of perennial vegetables. EverVeg.
So EverVeg are mostly old kind of vegetable plants, is for example skirret. When you talk about apples, especially, there you often say old varieties are old because they were replaced by new varieties. Now you come along with these old vegetables. So how will belong this together?
Yes, sometimes you are contradicting your own words, but here I'm not. It's the same situation. So new varieties came which were better than the old ones in the social situation of the 19th century. So when you look at the perennial vegetables, they weren't bred, they weren't developed in the last 200 years about. So they stayed at the same level. And seed-propagated vegetables, which you have to grow only 1 year or less, are 90% dominant. And look at the last 200 years, it's an industrialization of the horticulture production and of the agriculture, and in a industrialized way of plant production, 1 year old crops are much easier than perennial crops, and the uptake, what you can earn per meter square and per time is much bigger than with a perennial crop. So these crops diminished during the 19th century, and the seed-propagated vegetables dominated this natural process, which is in one with the industrialization of the agriculture. And there was another development that was the upcoming of the seed industry, of seed companies. And for seed companies, it was much easier to send and to sell seeds than to send plants, vegetatively propagated plants. So they of course, if they had the chance to develop further kale varieties where you can sell seeds every year, they were developing the seed varieties and not the perennial varieties. So it's a normal development, but it's all in the big picture of the development of the industrialized agriculture and horticulture.
So this old group of vegetable has lost in the past. Why now this new marketing of these old and
Yeah, the question is when there was a good reason that they went almost to zero during the 19th century, and we lost them almost in the 20th century. Why should they be interesting again now? And I think they're interesting again because our social cultural situation has changed. And I'm talking about the garden. Yeah, the garden of the 19th century and the garden, in many cases, not in all, of the first half of the 20th century was a small farm. Yeah, so it's the same rules as in the industrialization. So seed and crop, and you wanted kilogram because you wanted to be self-sufficient, and so on. The garden nowadays is not a farm. Yeah, and you are in a different situation. You have a business, you have a job, and in your opinion, you don't have enough time. You have a family, you have friends. Garden is perhaps a important minor thing for you, an important minor thing for you. It's minor because family and job are more important. And it's important because, of course, like other hobbies, you like it. But the time you can spend in your garden is only so big. And in this situation, perennial vegetables become easy because you don't have to hunt for new young plants every 10 days. You don't have to plant every year or several times in a year to have a veg plot. And you can plant one time and you can earn 5 years at least. And so I think this type of crops becomes interesting in a modern garden. And by the side, it's also a very sustainable crop.
But do you not think so that there is the risk that the market could be the market of seed propagated vegetable young plants will be cannibalized by selling EverVeg?
Yeah, that's perhaps an argument, and you can think about it. I don't think that's the case, or I don't think that will be the majority of cases because I think we are creating a new market, new customers. I think perennial vegetables are especially interesting for people who are now growing perennials. So perennial is a very interesting crop because perennial, so non-woody, several-year-old or growing plants are going up all over Middle Europe by 3 to 7, 8% per year because they are easy, they are not so expensive, and you can have the result of your gardening work for several years, not only 1 year. So these perennial plants are more and more dominating annual plants because it's also easy in a garden situation because you don't have to do every work every year. That's annoying for a hobby gardener for whom gardening is not the most important thing. It's a minor important thing in his life. And so I think we are creating a new market of new people, especially in the age of 30 to 50, people who are not really experienced gardeners, but who try now gardening with perennial vegetables because then they can grow vegetables in their garden and they can cook their own vegetables, and they don't have all this hassle thing with young plants they would have if they have annual vegetables.
And now we talk a lot about the benefits of the hobby gardeners. But why should a plant producer produce EverVeg, or why should a garden center or maybe a DIY market sell EverVeg plants?
Interesting question, of course, because you could say, oh, I'm used to sell annual vegetables. Why should I try the new ones? I'm doing good business with annual vegetables. Why now trying the perennial ones? But perhaps that's not the right way to look at it, because the most important way is the consumer perspective. If they are interested, if their lifestyle is more congruent with perennial plants, we should produce perennial plants and offer perennial plants. And I think we have to change a little bit the perspective. Of course, we have to look at ourselves, what is good for our industry. And I think even perennial vegetables are good for the industry. We can talk later on it. And but the most important thing, what is good for our consumers? What do they like? What is congruent to their way of life? And we, in the end, have to produce what they want.
And how could these new groups of vegetable plants could be sold? Do you have some most interested points for?
So, like many UK gardeners, also we have some experience. I think rather intense experience, because always at Lubera.com we are selling first years. If you have new products, also old new products, we are selling first at Lubera.com, and then we are choosing what could be interesting for as young plants for Lubera-Edibles. And it's the same situation here. We have already some years ago we have started to sell to a big chain perennial vegetables. Also there we have some experience. So I think 2-3 things are important. The first is trademark and explanation. We did the trademark Ewiges Gemüse in German and EverVeg, so it's very important to sell this trademark, to sell the concept. It could also be another name, but to sell it and to explain it. Because I think if you have a trademark, if you have a story with which says in short words, plant one time and you have a crop for 5 years, that's it. And you have to communicate not one time, 5 times, 10 times, 100 times, and then it will be heard. So trademark and communication. Then bigger plants. Don't sell perennial vegetables, EverVeg, as small plant in a 6-pack or in an 8-pack or something like this. Sell them as independent plants in a 1-2 liter. It's even with many species, it's even possible to, for example, horseradish, it's a fantastic plant in the 5-liter pot. And rhubarb is a fantastic plant in the 5-liter pot. And many others, or for example, climbers, like yam, for example, it's a fantastic plant in the 5-liter pot, climbing plant. So sell bigger plants. And then you have an upgrading, not only in the size of the plant, but also in the turnover. Because instead of selling 5 plants, you are selling 1, but at the price of 5 plants. So it's an interesting business, and to produce them is not so more expensive than to produce a small plant. So bigger plants, and then offer an assortment. It makes no sense to have only rhubarb and horseradish. So produce 5, 6, 7 plants, perhaps also perennial salads or other perennial things, to have an assortment to sell it to consumers. You can sell the concept, and it's more difficult to sell this or that plant than to sell the concept.
Okay, Markus, you are a plant breeder. You breed apples, for example, since 25 years. And every year you surprise your customers with some new and also some special breeding programs. Do you think that it would be necessary also to breed on EverVeg?
Yes, for sure. I think breeding and selection, domestication of EverVeg has stopped for 200 years now. In most cases, not in all. And it's time to revise. It's time to look again at these interesting vegetables. And we are doing it. So we started the breeding project in rhubarb, which was also bred in UK, for example, in the first half of this century. But we started the project there, and we learned a lot. And we learned a lot of different types of rhubarb plants we weren't thinking about when we started. You will see the results in some years. And I'm sure especially in tree kales, I think very interesting. But also winter hard Dioscera types, yam, yam types, or in sea kales are very interesting, and I think there is a huge potential for breeding, and in the long time we will not be able to resist.
Okay, Marcus, thank you for your explanation, and we are finished at the moment. I and Marcus, we hope that you enjoyed our conversation. And if you have questions or comments, please send it directly to me, to frederick.vollard@Lubera-Edibles.com. And in the next podcast, Marcus will explain the vegetable breeding at Lubera. So until then, we wish you a fruitful day.
Thank you very much. Go on gardening. Thanks for hearing Gardeners Radio by Lubera-Edibles. You find us on every platform for podcasts, Spotify, Apple, and of course on our website www.Lubera-Edibles.com. Go on gardening.